Down at the end of the trail of Tom Braniff Drive, just across the line from Irving, is one Corvair place. The Corvair by Chevrolet. Do you remember them? Rear engines, bucket seats.
John, what we're looking at here is what remains of the largest Corvair collection in the entire United States. At one time, there were over 400 Corvairs out here in this yard. At one time, they were actually double-decked, one on top of the other.
That's right. At one time, there were over 400 Corvair cars and vans at one Corvair place, and this was well after General Motors stopped producing them. As a matter of fact, it's been 20 years since the last one rolled down the assembly line in 1969.
The late Joe Birch founded this place back in around '72, and as a result of trying to get some work done on his daughter's car, and at that time the Chevrolet people didn't want to fool with Corvairs because they had been phased out.
What year was this?
That was '72 when he did that. These cars were made from, well, actually '59. The 60 model was the first model, like the one you're sitting on is a 60 model. And they were phased out in '69, and they were replaced by the Camaro.
How did he come to get all these Corvairs?
One thing led to another, and he started collecting them, and people would give them to him. He rarely ever bought a Corvair. I gave him 4 of my own.
How did people give them to him?
They just didn't want to fool with them, and he wanted them, and he needed the parts. And there were stories about Joe would go out to get his morning paper, and there'd be a car sitting in front of his gate with a note on it that says it's yours.
In case you're not familiar with the Corvair, from 1960 to 1969, there were under 2 million made, and the engine was in the rear.
Well, the engine is basically, the original design was basically what a tank engine was in World War II. And the man that created the Corvair, Edward and Cole, was the man that literally designed the engines for the Patton tanks during World War II. First air-cooled rear engine, mass-produced car in America. There were some air-cooled engines way back, but they weren't really mass-produced. All of them are 6-cylinder. They're horizontally opposed pistons. That means they go straight out to the side, much like a Volkswagen, but only twice the horsepower of a Volkswagen, or 3 times more. First standard car to have bucket seats. One of the first to have standard seat belts before they were made law. First production American car with a turbocharger. The Yenko Stinger racers, like I said, was only 100 of those ever made.
How much did a new Corvair cost in 1960?
Brand new, they cost around $2,500, give or take.
And what would one in good condition cost now?
Depending on the car. It really varies. It depends on what the market allows. You know, there are some people that can get them for $500, and there's a couple over here in the yard you can't buy for $5,000.
I remember when I was growing up, and I saw the Corvair vans, and up until then, I don't remember seeing any vans. Were they kind of the first ones as far as vans go?
Corvair was the first minivan. There was nothing else like it on the road at the time. They also had an 8-door van. It had 3 doors on each side and 2 doors in the back. It was the first mini pickup truck. It had a ramp side, a door that literally fell down to the side. You could drive your lawnmower, your motorcycle, whatever else, right up into the ramp side pickup.
Blanche Birch and her son Joe Jr. have fond memories of what Joe Sr. started.
I enjoyed coming out here when I was a kid, you know, playing with the cars, watching Dad work, watching him race.
What do you think of when you had over 400 Corvairs here, more than any place in the country?
Well, I got to think it was great because he stayed away from the golf course so much. He was here. When he got home from Coke at 1, he came out here. I always knew where he was. I was in the house. He was out here with a bunch of guys.
What did the Corvair in?
What really did it in was the big muscle cars. It was not, as most people tend to think, it was not Ralph Nader. He tends to get all the credit for having done it in, but he didn't. Nothing was proven that he claimed. He wrote a book that had 1 chapter about the Corvair.
Do you remember the name of the book?
Unsafe at Any Speed.
People from all over the United States and foreign countries call one Corvair place for information and parts. There are only about 80 Corvairs left on the lot, and soon there'll be none.